The Israel Defense Forces spokesman saying that Hamas has now violated the terms of the agreement by not returning all female civilians first as part of the exchange. Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari saying that Israel is, quote, extremely concerned about the fate of the Bibas family, an Israeli woman and her 2 young children, including Kafir Bibas, who was just a baby when he was kidnapped. It's not clear if this will have any sort of impact on the agreement, which is set to last for about 6 weeks before another discussion then takes place about moving to phase 2 of the plan. So much to discuss, as always, so I do want to bring in Mark Chandler, Director of Government Relations and Professor of Practice at Coastal Carolina University, also a former senior intelligence defense official. Thank you so much, Mark, as always, for being here with us to discuss all of this.
You're very welcome, Josh, and good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, first off, I do want to talk about this violation, according to the IDF, of the ceasefire. What do we know about that, and what do we expect, if anything, could come from it?
Well, before this morning, I would have said the ceasefire is progressing rather well, except that what we see today was the release. And I don't want to take anything away from the emotional joy that is being experienced in Israel right now, especially with those hostages' families. But Hamas is technically violating the ceasefire agreement. The first hostages who were supposed to be released included women, children, and you just addressed that family situation, and then sick and wounded individuals. Thus far, only females have been released, and today was 4 female soldiers, IDF soldiers. They're known as watchers in the Israeli military. And so they released that when there was supposed to be a civilian woman released in this group that was not. And then, so I think what you're seeing is, and it came out of the Prime Minister's office this morning, is a strong statement that Hamas is technically violating the agreement. And so I'm a little bit concerned about how that's going to play out, because actually Hamas is working, I would say, from an advantage, especially using emotional blackmail, knowing how important these hostages and releasing them are to the Israelis.
And the hostages are being released in exchange, as I mentioned, for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. We do have this live image that is coming in from Fox News and the Associated Press, and you can see they are propping up folks on their shoulders there as the prisoners are released. What do we know about some of these prisoners overall? Do we know much?
Well, so when I look at this, let's look at the deal. There's going to be 33 Israeli hostages released. And unfortunately, not all of those are likely to be living hostages. So there'll be some bodies in that 33 number. In exchange, Hamas gets 1,900, almost 2,000 prisoners released. And of those, at least 800 are known terrorists and serving prison sentences for terrorism, terrorist acts against Israel. Now, let me break that down a little bit further. So out of those 800, there are some really, really bad individuals. There are members and former leaders of, let's say, the Al-Aqsa Brigade, which is part of the Fatah terrorist arm and armed militant arm in the Fatah and the Palestinian organization. They're going to go right back into planning attacks on Israel, working and coordinating attacks against Israel, just like Sinwar did when he was released. So the ratio of hostages to Palestinians, and especially terrorists, is grossly imbalanced, in my opinion, as we're looking at this. And it's just going to further feed additional attacks on Israel. It may not be tomorrow, but these guys their goal is eliminate Israel and eliminate the Jews.
What does the next phase of all of this consist of? We know that phase 1 is underway. It's expected to last for a total of 6 weeks, could be extended there. Do we know what phase 2 really does consist of?
Well, just as a quick reminder to your audience, we are in phase 1, as you just pointed out. It's a 3-phase process. Phase 2 should begin after day 42. Now, the critical time coming up, and it's even more critical now with Hamas violating the ceasefire agreement at this stage, is day 16. So that's about a week and a half from now, when they are supposed to, both sides are supposed to gather again and start negotiating phase 2, what happens on day 43 and beyond, which is where they're going to release more hostages, perhaps all the hostages, obviously in exchange for more Palestinian prisoners, terrorist prisoners, and the like, and then work to phase three. Phase three is a long, drawn out phase that does include reconstruction within the Gaza Strip. And that's going to take a lot of international involvement. So that's what we're looking at. We're not even to day 16 yet, and Hamas is already violating the agreement.
This week, we heard from President Trump as he redesignated the Houthis as a terrorist organization. You and I have talked a lot about the Houthi terrorist group over the last several months. Do we know what that really does? Does it change anything about the situation taking place to have them officially categorized as a terrorist organization?
Well, actually, it does. It does set up some international parameters on that. It sets up some financial parameters and travel issues that focus on that. And let me point out, Trump originally did this in his first administration. Then Biden came in and pulled that designator. Now, there are some who are going to misinterpret what Biden did because he redesignated him, but he only did that as a special terrorist category, which is not the full terrorist organization category. So what we're doing now is any financial transactions, whether it's within the United States, from the United States, or among foreign powers to support the Houthis, is now in violation. So sanctions can be imposed on there. Obviously, no Houthi travel. I don't think that's going to be a big issue. But what I think you're seeing is President Trump coming in, as he said, and he's trying to push from a position of strength. Now, there have been U.S. strikes, but what this sets up really is negotiating, if there will be any, against the Houthis to stop what they're doing, to stop their attacks, and to stop their terrorist activities. But I would also think it would be prudent among the Trump administration right now to begin military planning, to look at a consistent and sustained level of strikes to work against the Houthi targets that are being supplied by Iran. So they're getting continual missiles and UAVs to strike Israel and that shipping. I think what you may see is this is a precursor to some possible military action focused against stopping the Houthis once and for all.
And what you're looking at there on the left-hand side of your screen, that is over in Hostage Square. We have seen that same image just about every Saturday over the past several months. We're talking 477 days as folks are gathering to welcome home these 4 women who were freed earlier on this morning in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. My last question for you here, as we kind of stay on the Houthis in general, you and I, again, always discuss this, but what have they been up to, so to speak, recently? Has there been as much activity as there had been months ago?
Well, since early last week, so about a week and a half ago, the Houthis conducted a series of strikes, missile strikes and UAV strikes, or attempted strikes against Israel in the early part of that week. And so since the inauguration this week, there's been very little aggressive Houthi activity. They say they are supporting the Hamas ceasefire, and they're only going to attack Israel-associated or Israel-bound shipping through the Red Sea. So that's an issue that they've got the threat out there. There's been a wrinkle. About midweek this week, they released prisoners that they had gotten from one of the ships called the Galaxy Leader. And there were 25 of those crew members released about midweek this week. And then just today, in a surprise move, the Houthis released 100 or so prisoners from the Yemen civil war. Now, that's not a new development. That's the Houthis trying to garner some sort of public support, as you see there. It really doesn't further anything. And I think what they're trying to do is to present themselves in a good light to the international community. But again, there's thousands more prisoners that they're holding, and they're actually still holding UN members. So I don't think the Houthis have turned over a new leaf. I think they're maybe trying to get that public opinion, which is so easily manipulated, to turn in favor of the Houthis, if you will.
All right, Mark Chandler there. As always, thank you so much for being here, especially this early in the morning. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
You're welcome, Josh. One thing I would like to add is and it shows in your video of the hostage release. You know, that's a long process where Hamas will take them, parade them through, and then turn them over to the Red Cross, and then they're turned over to IDF and flown back into hospitals and then meet with their family. But that key part that you're showing right now. This is, look at the amount of Hamas fighters. And something I know, that this is all playing for propaganda purposes. This is showing that Hamas believes they have the upper hand now in these negotiations and in the fight with Israel. I'd also like to point out the uniforms. What I find very surprising, those uniforms look brand new. I mean, I'm not looking like I'm seeing combat uniforms that have been through a war. So there's some sort of supply process going. And the Hamas is definitely trying to show that they're coming out ahead, and they're going to continue to use this for propaganda purposes. The other video about the Palestinians being released, it's like a New Year's celebration taking place there with all those folks being released. And now Fatah, the Al-Aqsa Brigade, is starting to get in on this. So really, I think it's a tenuous situation, and we need to not be subject to the propaganda that Hamas is going to try to utilize this for.
And yeah, you're looking at this live image right here. And again, you can see as the prisoners are released, they are hoisted onto the shoulders there of the people who are gathered around to watch all of this. Mark, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to join us and discuss this further. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, Josh. Hope you have a good day trying to cover everything.
You too.